So I guess first is, what was your goal? What were you trying to achieve writing Rethinking InfoSec?
I don't. If somebody asked me what my target audience was this morning, I don't really. It's just a bunch of thoughts and frustrations, and I've been doing this for 22 years now. And a few years ago, I took a break, honestly, from information security, from IT in general, and then I came back to it, and I was just like, why are we doing things this way? This doesn't make sense to me in many
Right.
regards, especially the kind of higher end of the market where people are spending, there seems to be this thing where you got SMEs, or as we call them here, SMEs, SMBs in North America, where you've really not got any budget. And then you got large organizations who are spending tens, if not hundreds of millions on information security. Some
Right.
companies, some banks are spending billions.
Right.
And they're still making the news because, well, they didn't patch the server. It's like, why are you spending $50 million a year on security tooling and then not patching a server?
Right.
Uh, and it's because you simply didn't think about it. And I keep hearing about this cybersecurity skills gap and how high the salaries are to attract talent. And I'm like, I was unemployed for 9 months before getting this job because no one wanted me. And I would keep getting feedback like too big for role or too proactive. And I'm like, we don't want anyone to fix the problems. No, we just want people in the SOC to handle tickets. I'm like, why don't you fix the things that cause the tickets?
Right.
Uh, no one had an answer for that, but that's not what we're looking for. So I just all these kind of frustrations. And if you look a little bit further upstream, if you take a step back and widen the scope, you start reaching all kinds of very different conclusions to what.
Sort of a different topic. You talk a lot about frameworks, how you feel organizations spend too much time focusing on frameworks. So
Yeah.
I guess my question to you is, I don't care if you agree or disagree with me, but we've been a big proponent of frameworks because it sort of gives you a roadmap. Um, so what, if any, role do you think frameworks should play in your security program?
I actually think frameworks are extremely important, but what I don't like is how people go immediately to a third-party framework,
Right.
try to build security to meet ISO or NIST, or here we have Cyber Essentials, that kind of stuff.
Sys 20.
Complete, completely, yeah, there you go. Completely neglecting the actual business in front of their face. I'm tick boxing all these controls that are in this
Right.
document that I downloaded off the internet, but I've never actually spoken to my HR team or my finance team or my marketing team, and I have no idea what systems they use, what business processes they have. I'm just ticking boxes off that have nothing to do with my business. So I always create a framework because you absolutely need to structure work. You need to have schedules. You need to have all your areas defined, what the policies and processes are for each area. You have to have governance on top of that. You have to have executive sign off. I organize all that in kind of a documentation matrix with all these things in it. But I base them on what do we actually do kind of from scratch. I have a format that I keep reusing, and that's actually going to be the third book, which I guess will be quite odd for a lot of people. It's how I like to structure that. And then once I have it, then I can map it back to NIST or ISO for compliance reasons. And it's a very quick thing because I just take whatever ISO wants. We do that here, we do that there. Because quite often you'll go to NIST or ISO, and it's got a requirement of you should do this. It's like, okay, but you should do this where? Because
Right.
this statement probably applies in some shape or form to 50 different areas. And most security teams aren't even aware of half of those areas. So it's like, oh yes, you must have this kind of access control. Oh yes, we've implemented this kind of access control. Yeah, here,
Right.
but not everywhere.
Right.
You have things where that may be a serious issue, and so always map things to the business first. Find a structure that works for you, so that mapping of how you feel your security should be done to your business is perfect, because it's actually tailored to your business. Because if I find quite often, if you're trying to do that translation of the statement in the NIST standard to your reality, you're really trying to force fit stuff. Now, I'd much rather have a framework that's geared towards my business, where it's a direct, clean fit, and then I much rather have it the interpretation forced in the mapping between my framework and NIST, because that's just a paper mapping. That's not my business reality that really matters. So if I have to twist some words to make it fit NIST, I'd rather do that than twist a meeting to make it fit my environment. Does that make sense?
Right.
So yeah, just really build, like people go through controls, right? When they do these assessments, I go through org charts. I want to be like every single person, every single stakeholder. What do you do? What systems do you use? What are your business processes? What data do you touch? What's the flow? And then I start building security around that. And then yeah, okay, if I have to have one document about whatever it may be, configuration management, then I'll figure out a way of doing that that works for all the departments or for most, and then I'll add an exception. But I base it around the business rather than the outside. And if you do that part of you make it part of IT process rather than enforcing controls on top. You make it a part of business process even. And the thing about business process is it's the business. It always gets run. If you make it a security process that's tacked on at the end, it doesn't always get run, and it's the first thing that gets cut out and dropped and neglected.
Exactly.
You know that very well. And you see this all the time because people, they get their ISO 27001 certification, we're certified, and then 11 months later, we've got the surveillance audit next month. Everyone scrambled to make it look like we've been doing things. Well, that's proof that it's not working, isn't it? If you're having to do audit prep, then this is supposed to be part of the DNA of your company. It gets done all the time, and yet you're having to change dates on document, clean things up, update things, patch criticals, take stuff off the risk register or downgrade them off the risk register. So the auditor doesn't ask you, well, why haven't you fixed this critical in 6 months? And that's what people do left and right. It's like you're just lying to the auditor. You're just lying to yourself as well.
So the final question I have is, you talk a lot in different ways about how as an industry we become quite accustomed to groupthink, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
We have a certain set of processes. We do this, this, and this. So how do you see us changing that, given everything is taught from an ABC 1, 2, 3 perspective?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I actually had someone on LinkedIn commented that he was just starting to read the book, and he commented that he saw a lot of things he was coming into cybersecurity from oil and gas. And he said, I see a lot of the same problem, quick technical fixes, this and that. Some of these things are human nature. They don't want to address just a quick technical fix rather than addressing the root cause. But he was also using language, like one of the particular things was continuous improvement. Continuous improvement is not a term I hear very often in information security. So already I think like people from other industries, aviation, oil and gas, these are, they're far better at like root cause analysis. That was another term he used. We need to start adapting these concepts. We're looking for people from other industries. These people have tremendous value because they have different insights or they have concepts that have been matured in other settings that we can absolutely adopt. And yet we're filtering them out. We don't even need to do more. We need to do less blocking, less filtering, and just let those people in. And I find, I use the car analogy very often, where we've got a car factory, you're building the car, and it goes through the assembly line, and then it gets pushed into the parking lot from the third floor. So the car's all smashed up, and you end up having 1,000 people fixing all these smashed up cars, and no one's going into the assembly line and say, guys, just make the cars come out the ground floor. And if I hire a CISSP with 10 years experience, he's just going to run to the parking lot and start fixing cars. And I can hire like a 20-year-old fresh out of university, and the first thing he's going to do is like, why the hell are we checking the cars from the third floor? Let's fix that. But no one wants to hire these people without experience, or rather without indoctrination. So I think if we just stop doing so much filtering, we'd get loads of fresh ideas, but we're actively blocking. So we can actually do a lot less and have things improve for us. So I think that's what I think. This proactive approach it's still a minority, but I think it's improving. I genuinely think it's getting better. It might only be 2% of security practitioners, but it's a lot more than it used to be.
Right.
And I think a lot of people find it very interesting. The way we work as well is, all these SOC analysts just burning out, just staring at screens all day, endlessly fixing alerts. There's no satisfaction. There's no reward. It's tiring. It's stressful. if you go proactive and you actually go and have coffee with people and work things out, and you're constantly discovering things about the business and developing your own brand and your influence and dealing with people, it's way more rewarding. It makes this line of work way more rewarding. I mean, I quit like a few years ago because it's crap. This is just not a good, I mean, yeah, it pays the bills, but it's just not a rewarding line of work to be in. Yeah, so I think there's a few factors conspiring to things slowly getting better. I mean, the cost is becoming unsustainable as well. I mean, even it's growing, you know, it's growing as in absolute terms, but it's growing also in a percentage of IT spending. It's like we're at like 12% of IT spending is security now. What, next year it's going to be 15% and then 20% and 25%. What, we're going to spend 90% of the IT budget on security? It's just, right. And we're not even slowing down the number of breaches. So it's something has to give sooner or later. I've been pleasantly surprised with the book. The number of people that have written me has said, I thought I was crazy all this time. Thank you so much for putting this out there. Now right. I can actually back it up with some things. So yeah, that's been quite rewarding. I think that's been the best part of it. It has to change, and it's funny because I speak at conferences and I'm just completely common sense stuff, and people are just there like almost with goosebumps, like, completely fascinated by it. And I'm like, it's like, this is absolute common sense. Like the sound guy in the back of the room completely understands what I'm saying.
Right.
He's like, well, duh. But everybody else in the room is like, oh, this is revolutionary. It's like, it's not. This is how far to the left we've gone with the way of working. And it's just bring it back down to basics and look at the big picture. And it makes sense, I think. And the more you can always argue, it's funny how like this open-minded people tend to reach the same conclusions, whereas indoctrinated people will reach a whole number of conclusions depending on what right. they've been indoctrinated in. But right. the open-minded, intelligent people tend to reach the same conclusions because they've thought it through and they end up in the same place. So you can always argue if it's truth, you can argue it and you'll end up in the same place. So hopefully more and more of us will end up there.